Hello, beautiful souls. My name is Dinka Salvador. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I want to talk to you about disappearing, how we lose our identity sometimes. Have you looked in the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back? I remember after a breakup, I had to, I decided to move and I lost 5 kilos in a month. I had anxiety. I couldn't sleep. I had no outlook or a sense of self. And I just wanted to validate that feeling that this isn't just in your head. If you feel this way for whatever reason, whatever you're going through, there are other people going through the same feeling. And it's perfectly normal to have that feeling. Although it's not nice, it's not a good thing, but it exists. And I think that there's a need for us to talk about it. It's a real phenomenon for many women. This is a real thing, and you cannot just push it aside and just ignore it because it's impacting a lot of people. So, what are the symptoms of fading away? It's not an overnight thing. It's not like you wake up one day and you feel like, oh my God, where did I go? Where did my sense of self go? It's a very subtle process where it's kind of like chipping away at your sense of identity. You kind of just like lose a bit of yourself every single day due to the circumstance or the situation that you're experiencing. For me, it was because of a breakup. So basically, I was already in this relationship for about 2 years when we decided to move in with each other. I had a very nice apartment in the city. I loved it. I called it my paradise, and the relationship dynamic was good. So that's why we thought after 2 years, it's a reasonable amount of time. We knew each other, so that we should consider moving in, which we did. And I ended up moving into his place because he owned his house. So it was a no brainer because I was renting. But then this was not in the same city where I was living. So I left behind not only my apartment, but my complete environment, my sense of knowing the place, and also my support system, my friends, all my connections, and my go to people and places that I visited on a daily basis. Long story short, after not such a long time, about 6 months, I felt that this is not the life that I want to live. It wasn't because there was no love anymore. That wasn't the case. But sometimes love, it's just not enough. I felt completely isolated and that I was living somebody else's life, basically. And it's a slow process. I didn't feel like this is happening for some time, but then after a while, I just felt like I'm not the person that I knew myself to be. And somehow society conditions us women to put ourselves last, right? Like we have to make sure everyone else around us is fine, and then we don't have enough care and love and attention for ourselves, which is totally not okay. And I find that it's completely backwards. You have to be selfish. That's the only way, because it's necessary. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot show up for the people that you love if you don't show up for yourself. You're just running on low all the time with empty batteries. It's just a matter of time that you will crash and burn. I also want to address the difference between depression and this specific type of disconnection that I felt that I was experiencing. In my view, depression is kind of like when you are in a persistent low mood and you have like kind of a loss of interest in all kinds of activities. But this disconnection that I was experiencing, that primarily is an issue of a loss of a personal identity rather than the mood. I wasn't happy, obviously, but it wasn't because I was depressed. I just felt that there was a disconnection. And sure, then you would think like, oh, self-care, like you should just kind of carve some time out for yourself and take a bath and journal and meditate and all that kind of stuff. Take a walk in the park or whatever works, whatever your idea of self-care is. But sometimes it's not good enough. It's just you need to get back to yourself. You need to find a way back to your true self in order to give that love for yourself. So, how do we do that? There are a lot of hidden triggers, especially for women. Consistently putting others' needs first is not helping. We are very trained into this as women, that you have to cater to everyone else's needs before you even consider your own. And I think it's important to first be aware of it in order to change it. And then we really just need to stop doing this, because if you want to show up for someone that you love, be it a partner, a child, or your parents, or a friend, if you are completely drained and you have nothing to give, you are actually just sucking their energy to keep yourself from drowning. You are probably not a lot of fun to be around. You are maybe snappy, you are moody, you cannot really focus on whatever they have to share. So again, just keeping your own cup full first. It's like what they say on the airplanes, like putting your own oxygen mask on first before you help others. This is the way to go. I think that it's not only not selfish, but this is the most selfless act of caring, to care for yourself. As RuPaul says, if you can't love yourself, how in the hell you gonna love somebody else, right? So I think that we really need to change that kind of indoctrinated view on, no, 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 everybody else comes first, and then when you have nothing else to give and you're completely drained and you're all like battery flat out, then you can even consider taking time for yourself. And then of course, being trapped in survival mode, because that's in the end is what it is. When you cannot find yourself, when you have no sense of identity, you are just trying to survive, it's very hard to find the time and the energy to make change happen, or to apply any kind of self-care routine when you're constantly in survival mode. So basically, the first thing we need to address is to get out of survival mode. And of course, this has a huge impact on your physical health as well. I lost 5 kilos in only 1 month, which is not a good thing. I was just like not eating. I couldn't sleep. I was really drained, but I couldn't sleep because my mind was just like rushing constantly, like 200 tabs open. What if this, what if that? And I couldn't focus on anything. I just felt so dispersed. And also, it has effects on all the relationships. I felt like I was shutting down. I'm kind of a social person with my so small group of friends that I have, but I just felt like I wasn't in the mood. Even when I was with people, I was just like constantly in my head, just like playing all the scenarios. And I felt even more isolated. And also, it's interesting to consider the generational cycles that it creates. Every unresolved trauma that we carry gets passed down to the next generation. So in a way, it is our responsibility to deal with at least our own trauma, but I would even go as far as dealing with all the inherited trauma that we got passed down from previous generations. Because if you don't deal with it, then the next one in line will have to, or well, I mean, it gets passed down as far as somebody is brave enough to face it. I think it's very crucial that you also speak up for yourself, because if you don't, who will? Like, nobody's coming to save you. And as I say always, it starts with awareness. If you're not aware of something, then you cannot change it. So what is the path to back to yourself? I found that my personal turning point in this specific situation was the change of scenery. I decided to move out. I got a new job. I started new routines, and it still wasn't great. It still wasn't what I wanted. It was again just like a survival mechanism to deal with life at that point. But things slowly started to get better. I wasn't constantly faced with the situation anymore. It was still lingering in the back of my mind, but I felt also that I had the power because I decided to move. I took action. I moved away. I found a new job. I started meeting new people. But okay, this is true for my specific example, but I imagine that maybe the situation that you feel this way, that you're disappearing, maybe it's not so easy. Maybe you have a child who's also involved in the situation, and you cannot just up and leave because you have to consider their well-being and what's best for them. But what I'm trying to say is that you have a certain amount of power. You cannot change the circumstance, or you cannot change if somebody's doing something to you. You cannot change the other person. What you can change is how you deal with it. To what degree do you allow it to affect you? And there's always something we can do. I don't have the answers to your specific situation. I can only share my truth and what worked for me. And for me, removing myself from the situation started to make things slowly better. And also the power of just naming what you're experiencing. It can feel like you're reclaiming your voice. Just talking to yourself in the mirror, for example, and just speaking it out loud, just kind of looking yourself in the eye and saying, like, I feel like I'm disappearing. I feel like I'm not myself. You can even journal about it, or even record yourself, either a video, or I also used to do just like voice recordings, because I find that once you say things out loud or once you write them down, it's like casting a spell, right? Like it's energetically out of your system. And it's very interesting to read or to listen or rewatch these recordings, even straight after you've made them, or especially after a certain time have passed, because it's kind of like a time capsule. It can be very triggering as well, because it brings you back to that specific moment that was loaded with that kind of energy and emotion. But then it can also be very healing, because sometimes you have no other outlet. You don't have anyone to talk to, or there's no one to listen to you, or you just don't feel comfortable sharing it with someone else. So sharing it with yourself in this way, that you are just like talking to yourself, or writing in your journal, or recording it on your phone and just listening to it, it can make you feel like you are not going through this alone. Like there's someone listening. And also creating boundaries without guilt. I know this is a big one. It's easier said than done, but I feel that can also be something like you're taking your power back. And it's okay to put yourself first. Like we just talked about this. Not only is it okay, sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes it's absolutely vital that you focus on yourself first, because otherwise you're just going to spread yourself thin and make the situation even worse. And then finding your tribe, I think this is a really big one. And maybe it's, again, easier said than done, but that's partially my aim with this community that I am creating, for women to come together and just share their journey, and not necessarily in the hope of looking for a solution or an answer, but sometimes just the feeling that I'm not doing this alone, I'm not the only one who's experiencing this, can make you feel that there is hope, or at least just feel understood and seen and heard and enough. And I think it's very important that you understand that you don't have to fight this fight completely on your own. We can relate to each other, we can uplift each other, we can help each other, we can be there for each other, hold space for each other, and sometimes that's enough too. So I hope that you like this video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it, and if you got any value out of it, please subscribe to my channel, and I hope to see you in my next video.